the most important asset you will ever manage is your career. So you need to look out, at least 18 months and understand where do you want to be 18 months from now and take the very concrete steps to be there in 18 months. And I did that continuously to reinvent myself and take on new areas of coverage, to give really successful areas to other people who were up and coming and strike off and do new things. So I was very entrepreneurial inside of companies. And I took that energy and exercised it externally too, as well as entrepreneur.
Welcome to the She's So Sweet podcast, where we interview accomplished women who have worked their way to the C suite. I'm your host, Kristi Faltorusso, advisor, investor, former CCO, and award winning customer success executive. I am so thrilled to introduce today's guest. I've got our founder and CEO of Quantum Networks Group and New York Times bestselling author, Charlene Li. Charlene, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on it.
I'm so excited. I already got a sneak peek into some of what you've been up to, so I'm excited to dive right in. But before we do that, why don't we lay some foundation for our listeners? Tell them a little bit about yourself, your background, so that way they get to know you, and then we can get into things.
Sure. I have been a longtime analyst and author. And one of the things that I focus on is how technologies, these big disruptive technologies, are shaping organizations, people, and our society. So I wrote my first book in 2008 about how organizations can use social media, and that was called Groundswell. And I just published my seventh book called Winning with
Oh my
AI, the
goodness.
90-Day Blueprint for Success. So I've been at it for a while and really enjoy it. I again was an analyst at Forrester Research for about 10 years, so very much in the tech scene. I live in San Francisco. I have two adult children who live nearby, and just really enjoy doing all this work to help people figure out how to manage and thrive with disruption rather than have it wreck their worlds.
Well, I mean, I think that our conversation and the content that you're obviously creating is so timely in this age of AI where everyone is struggling to figure out how and what to do. And, it just feels like chaos in all the best ways, right? Anytime we go through these transformational journeys, it's exciting, but terrifying at the same time. So I love to hear that you're addressing this with folks and organizations.
Right. And I think, again, we'll get into it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because we could definitely go down a rabbit hole really quick. Okay. Well, I love to start the conversation with just understanding what you thought you'd be, because I always think that's super interesting to hear from my guests. So I want you to go think back to as early as you can remember. So as young as you can, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up? Or what did you dream of becoming one day?
I wanted to be a doctor just like my dad. My dad was
Oh,
was a pediatrician. He's still with me at the ripe age of 93 and going strong.
oh, I
And
love that.
he just had this joy of working with his patients. He was meant to be a pediatrician. And the
Um,
kids loved him. Many of them were my friends to my guests. And I just saw the trust that they had in him and how much he enjoyed just helping them stay healthy and get healthy. So I wanted to be a doctor, just like my dear
okay.
dad.
Was there a specific kind of doctor? Did you also want to be a pediatrician or did you want to practice some other kind of medicine?
As I got older, I didn't know,
Okay.
probably not a pediatrician because I worked in the office and there were just a few too many screaming kids for me. And, as I got older, I thought maybe I'd go into the research side of being in medicine because
Mhm.
I'm a bit of a geek. I really like digging down into things. I love doing research. So I had ambitions on getting an MD, PhD and living in a lab and ironically, trying to understand the biological basis of intelligence. That's what I was going to look at.
Oh my gosh, you're like the dream mom for my daughter because that's what she's going to college for right now is like physics, applied mathematics, but in research. And so yeah, you guys would have a lot in common. I love that. So I need to understand now because as far as I know, and maybe you are, and I don't know, you're not a doctor now, right?
No,
So you're
definitely
gonna
not a
have to take
doctor.
me on this take me on this journey because how did we get from wanting to be a doctor and practicing medicine to now doing what you do today?
Well, being the geek that I am, I enrolled at Harvard and I had so many AP credits that I could enroll as a sophomore and declare a major, which I did in neurobiology. I was sitting there living my dream and I ran into the brick wall of requirements because I had not taken organic chemistry. I couldn't do the labs that I wanted to. I was realizing that a lot of the science at these liberal arts colleges were geared towards pre-med versus research. And I just went, this is not what I want to be doing. And I also realized that the type of research I want to do was not going to be ready. The science just wasn't going to be there for another 20 years.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm not going to wait that long. We just didn't have the technology to be able to look at and understand what was happening neurologically. And the time was just about that, was about 20 years before people could really go and understand brain science and neurology. So your daughter is hitting it at the right time.
Oh,
And
we're
so I
excited
said,
for her.
I said, I'll go look at these things called social sciences. And Harvard has this major called social studies, which is an integrated study of all the social sciences. So anthropology, psychology, economics, sociology. So all of these things together. And that really appealed to my interdisciplinary synthetic systems thinking. And so I went and did that. And I was also increasing my work on student leadership, especially Model UN. And so I was doing this and I went to my parents. I'm like, I'm going to switch my major. I'm not going to become a doctor anymore. And they went, oh, what do you mean? What are you going to do then? And I said, I'm going to go into business. And their response was, you, you realize that everyone in business is tall, white, and male. You are none of those things. And I went, yeah, but I really enjoy it. And I get, and they asked, how many other Asian business women do you know? And I thought
Mm,
about it, and I said I couldn't name 'em one. I could not name a single one.
wow.
There were no role models. And my response was, I type 120 words a minute. I'll be fine. If the worst comes to worst, I'll be the world's best executive assistant. But I want to go and see what this looks like. And to their credit, my parents are immigrants from Taiwan and Hong Kong. And they have that typical immigrant mentality. You have to have something safe career-wise, or else you're gonna be in big trouble. It's really hostile out there. Uh, and to their credit, they let me do this. They did not say you're gonna fail. They didn't say you can't do this. You have to go study a science, engineering. They 100% supported me. And
Oh, I love
and
that.
that just counts for a lot, that they supported my adventures into something that no one in their social circles, no one was a businesswoman. There were just very few business people that they knew, let alone women who were in business.
So then, okay, so now we have mom and dad's blessing. We're going to continue to pursue this. You finish your degree at Harvard. What happens after that?
I went and joined a strategy consulting firm called Monitor Group and did
Okay.
that for 3 years, including 2 of them overseas in Amsterdam and London. And then I realized there were so many things I didn't know, so I applied for business school, got into Harvard Business School, came back, also got into, Kennedy School of Government and was gonna do a joint degree and eventually graduate and go do economic development internationally. I came home and realized I was really homesick. And so
Oh.
I wanted to stay in the US, scrap that whole thing, drop the Kennedy School of Government, just did the MBA, and had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I did a bunch of research. I could see this thing called the internet coming up. It was 1992, 1993, my last year. And the internet was becoming a thing, and the World Wide Web hadn't even been developed yet. And I just said, this is going to be a thing. And how do I get involved in it? So I did research and studied the hardware, the software, the communication pipes, and then the content, and realized I knew nothing about the first three, but I am a rabid. I'm just consume a ton of content of media. So went and interviewed in those areas, did research, and ended up thinking that newspapers would be the first place that the internet would disrupt. So I got myself a job at the San Jose Mercury News, coming out of Harvard Business School, which everybody thought I was insane.
A
But
little
I was
bit.
thinking, I'm going to be in Silicon Valley at the front edge of this new development called the internet, and I'm going to be at the newspaper that was already focusing on how it was going to move into this space. So I'm like, I'm going to be exactly where I want to be. So that began my career in disruption. And it felt very comfortable because I felt my previous life was all about disruption. I was an Asian woman growing up in Detroit where there are very few Asians. So I
Mm.
would just walk into a room and would be be a disruption in the room.
Ugh.
So I figured, I'm kind of used to this. I'm very comfortable walking into uncomfortable places. Why not keep doing that? And so I went to the Mercury News, did that for a couple of years, got married, moved to Boston, did more newspapers there, had a child, and realized I'm tired of managing people. So decided to take a job at Forrester Research, thinking I would be there for just 2 years. Well, this kid and a second kid were in diapers and could have a nice steady job, like just really good structure. And I stayed there for 10 years. It was just such a
Wow.
great fit for me. I have this gene for research. I love doing it. I love taking complex ideas, synthesizing them down into understandable, simple ideas so that people can take action on them. That is my superpower. So being an analyst, this was a really good fit. And I just could look at all the new things that were changing and coming. So I did the internet advertising, sizing that drove the dot-com boom, looked at search, started blogging, wrote about social media, wrote my book, and realized I needed to do something else. So I started my own company at age 42, my own analyst firm with two young kids at home. And we can talk about that adventure, but that's how I ended up being an analyst and a writer and an author.
I don't even I have so many questions, I don't even know where to start. But okay, I do need to call out something because I don't think that if I don't call this out and we talk about this for a minute, I don't think organically it's gonna come up and I don't wanna miss it. You talked about not enjoying managing people. And I feel like this is not something that gets talked about enough because everyone is trying to grow in their career. And for so many people in front of them, they see the only way to do that is to move into these leadership roles that require people leadership, right? And they believe that they can't really grow and get as high as they want to if they don't lead and manage people. But managing people is hard and it is not for everybody. So can you talk to me a little bit about like your experiencing managing people and like what that realization was that maybe that wasn't the work that you loved the most and then being able to disconnect that and finding a career path where you were fulfilled in other ways?
Right. Again, by the time I left community newspaper company, it was a group of about 45 people that was on the internet
Mhm.
newspaper side of things. And unlike other newspapers online, we were profitable. So it was a great business to be running. And I had a baby at home, and I went home to manage a baby, and I went to work and was managing babies again. That's what it felt like. And I'm like, I already have a baby. I don't need 45 more of them. And just my I brought in a COO who just did the day-to-day so I could focus on strategy, on leadership, communications, and it was great. But I just said my heart again, I have so many friends from business school where they love managing people, they love running organizations, and I'm like, "You can have that. I really don't like this." And so I went into, to be an individual contributor. It was wonderful. I could just be geeky and do my things and write and go home and take care of babies. And then Forrester tapped me to become a leader again, to be a manager of the team. And I go, "I don't want to do this." They go, "We don't really have anyone else who's qualified." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll do it," because it's a little bit different. And again, I felt like I was managing babies. And then they tapped me to run the San Francisco office. I'm like, "Okay, fine." And so I'm good at it. I'm decent at it. I can be quite successful at it, but it is not my calling.
Yeah.
And it's just realizing that. So what do I do when I leave Forrester? I start a company. Like, what was I thinking? And I couldn't help myself. And again, I found myself in the same situation going, I wanted to do my research and I was having to manage a company and grow a company. That said, it was really fun to start and grow a company. And the funnest thing I've ever did and the hardest thing I've ever did.
Okay. I love that. And I don't want to completely take us off track here, but I had to dig into that for a moment because it's something that I hear from a lot of people. And I recently stepped out of an operator role where I was CCO at a company for the past 5 years and have started my own consulting practice where it's just me. And I've had so many people say, like, what is the best parts of doing this? And what are some of the low parts? And interestingly enough, I said, I really love not working for someone, but I also really love having no one work for me. There is something beautiful. Like, I'm like, maybe I'm this lone wolf that I never thought I was, but like, to your point, the emotional drain that it is to manage people, like, again, I wasn't bad at it, but it wasn't the work that fulfilled me. And I think it's an interesting thing for people to reflect on because you can be wildly successful in your career and you don't have to do certain things. So I think figuring
Right.
out what you love and leaning into that is probably the right idea in a lot of cases to help you design a career that you could be really proud of.
Right. And at one point, I had sold my company, was working there, and then left that to join a very large consulting firm based in London as a chief research officer. And I thought it was going to be a great job. And I realized very quickly, this is so not me. Dealing with internal politics and
Yes.
having to deal with all the things that come with it. I'm like, I am not wired for this. It is not the place I want to be. So I am now a solopreneur like you.
Mhm.
And it's wonderful. And I think there's also a phase in life because earlier on, I was much more interested and had the energy for building and I figured my life was so chaotic, I may as well just add a little bit more chaos to it. And and now Arthur Brooks, a wonderful professor at Harvard Business School, talks about crystallized intelligence, where you want to apply your knowledge and expertise. And so this right now really suits what is really important to me and similar to you. I love the independence. I love no one having to depend on me and me not having to depend on anybody else. I have an amazing team of people that I work with, and it just works really well for me at this point. So understanding what's really important to you and what makes you joyful in the work
Yeah.
that you do. And just understand and really know yourself well enough because there's so much pressure to have this definition of what good looks like imparted from society. And one of the things I had to grow up in my 50s and understand was my definition of good is what should be driving me, not everybody else's definition of
Right.
good.
Ah, I love that. I love that. Okay, so now we're gonna kind of dig in a little bit deeper on your career journey here because obviously you've had so much success and I want to unpack some of this. So I want you to reflect back on your journey for a moment. I want you to think about what some of those pivotal moments were or like the big decisions that you feel like you had to make that really contributed to your success.
Well, I think joining Forrester was a big step because I left a very visible, prominent role in online newspapers. I was on the national board for newspapers. I mean, it was a very visible role. And then when I left Forrester after 10 years, I left very quietly, and I sort of made an excuse that I needed to go home and take care of kids. People thought I had retired and left, was taking time off. And I just went into a bit of a hibernation mode to let my non-compete expire, basically, and um, so that I could recruit people to start my firm. And so I was doing my own thing, just kind of quietly building my own brand, writing a new book, and then once the year passed, hired 3 other people, 2 of them from Forrester. So I was being very careful and respectful of those non-competes, and really wanted to do it the right way. But deciding to leave Forrester after 10 years, I mean, this is the place where I became professionally who I was. My reputation was huge. Um, the company was doing really well. I was doing really well. My reputation was at its peak. I just published a best-selling book, and I left. And deciding to leave was the hardest thing. But I realized my growth was being stymied by the organization, not because of anything nefarious. Just wasn't a match with the way they
Yeah.
wanted to run the company and what I wanted to do. So I just went, it was time to go. And I think the hardest thing, oftentimes, when I talk to people all the time about this, is when do you exercise the power with 2 feet and walk out the door? Because that ultimately is the most powerful thing you have. And I also realized that I was 42 at the time when I went and left and started my own company. The most important thing I learned at Harvard Business School was that the most important asset you will ever manage is your career. So you need to look out, at least 18 months and understand where do you want to be 18 months from now and take the very concrete steps to be there in 18 months. And I did that continuously at Forrester to reinvent myself and take on new areas of coverage, to give really successful areas to other people who were up and coming and strike off and do new things. So I was very entrepreneurial inside of companies. And I took that energy and exercised it externally too, as well as an entrepreneur. So this felt very comfortable in some ways to just try a new thing and go off and do something else.
It sounds like it was for you, but I fear that it's not probably for so many, right? Like that you had a level of comfort, but also confidence to go and do this and make that decision. And I love the idea of designing the career 18 months out, right? Like thinking about it, like where do I want to find myself in 18 months? Now, what I find when I talk to a lot of leaders is they might know where they want to be in 18 months, but they don't know how to architect a path to get there. So, how did you do that, right? So, you were very intentional about saying, this is where I want to be in 18 months. And you took this very entrepreneurial spirit and did what you did in Forrester to like create, get the different experiences and exposure and do different things that set you up for success. But majority of folks don't even know, like, they don't know what the map looks like. How did you figure out what that looked like? Or what advice could you offer to people who are sitting in a spot where, like, I know where I want to go, I don't know how to get there?
Um, I I experimented a lot. Again, again, as an analyst, you are constantly pushing and seeing where is the market going to go, where because you have no idea. People think we have this uncanny ability to predict the future. I have no idea what was gonna happen, but I had this portfolio of ideas, and I would just water all of them and see which one would take root. I'm like, "Oh, this is interesting. This search thing, this crazy little company called Google is doing something really interesting here." And everyone around me goes, "Why would you pay for traffic? That's the most ridiculous thing." I'm like, "You have no idea." As a small business and running a business, I could see how incredibly beneficial that was. Right. So again, that richness of ideas, your perspective and expertise and creating a certain point of view. So I was constantly researching and testing. And I tried this little thing called social media. And I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. It changes the power dynamics. And so what I tended to do was to run towards saying where power was being shifted. That is the
Mm.
place disruption happens. When something comes along and power shifts, then that's going to be very interesting because people will be feeling like they're losing power. Other people will feel like they're gaining power. And it's one of the things that I realized with Web3 and blockchain. It was really interesting enabling technologies, but there wasn't a lot of power being shifted. So I looked at those and I kept watering them. Is there something interesting here? And there was nothing interesting there. So I
Yeah.
just kind of like, VR, virtual reality, interesting, got Oculus but nothing really came out of that because I didn't see power shifting. It wasn't going to be that disruptive. Very interesting and very cool, but a bright, shiny object in the end. So I really sort of just wait until these big things come along. And then when AI hit, I'm like, oh, this
I
is
was
this
just
is a
gonna
big
ask you, I was like, so when was the moment that you felt the power dynamic shifting when you started to see and hear more about AI? Honestly, I can't get off a podcast without talking about AI somehow or some way. So this is our opportunity to do it. So what was the
well,
observations that you started making early that you were like, uh-oh, this is the thing?
Well, 2 things. I had been fascinated by AI and knew about GPTs and transformer technologies. Cannot go near it because I am not a technologist. I do not know how to code, right? I'm just miserable at it. And then when chat came along and they put a chat interface, I'm like, this is the best thing ever. I can actually do this. And I realized how much power I had as a result. And then I asked the AI to be me and I fed it the questions from a podcast that I had done. And this is early 2023. So this is ChatGPT 3.5, not very powerful, but not what we have today. So I gave it the answers. I had my answers. I gave them to people to score, and AI did about 80% as good a job as me. I mean, 80%? It does a pretty good job of
That's
imitating me.
incredible. Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, I'm shop liver. What am I gonna do? I mean, and I had that existential crisis that many of us have, like, "Oh, AI is gonna replace me." And so I'm sitting there going, "Okay, wait, take a deep breath. You've been through this, not your first rodeo. What was a 20%? What was it about my
Mm.
answers in those 20% that made them better?" And what it turned out was I inserted a piece of myself. I took my humanity, my empathy, I took a half-formed conversation that I'd had the week prior and brought it into the conversation. I was kind of winging it in some points, and and these were things that were not in AI, and
Yeah.
it created something fresh and new in a perspective. So what I realized was the thing that I bring to the table wasn't this vast knowledge and experience. It was my ability, as it had been in the past, to synthesize a lot of different things that were coming at me, to understand, to have that intuition, the self reflection, the judgment and the wisdom, and all this empathy. Because AI can be empathetic, but it cannot experience empathy. AI does not have intuition. It can act very intuitively, and
Mhm.
AI can sound very wise and help you make wise decisions, but there is no wisdom in there. So and this is what I really focused on to say, not only in my work, but also for myself, how do I forge an identity in a world where AI can do so many things? And that, again, was just constantly just going back to my disruptive work in the past. Where do I want to be 18 months from now? What do I want to be doing? How will I be using AI and having it enhance the things that are unique to me rather than seeing it as a threat?
I think you have already navigated a lot of what people are on the precipice of navigating, where they're having this identity crisis alongside of AI. Um, so you've definitely experienced probably a little bit more than some who are still trying to figure all of that out. Now I'm going to try to avoid making this an AI podcast, even though I could very well ask you 30,000 other questions on that. And I want to so desperately. I am going to just focus on getting back to your career. So, I gotta talk about battle scars because I think that oftentimes you see someone's career trajectory and like even just the story you've told us about kind of how you navigated it with the intentionality, the success that you've had. We forget that there was probably a lot of obstacles that you had to overcome to get there. And I think it's important that we talk about that because no journey is an easy one. So when you think back to your career, right? You've done so many different things and you've navigated and charted this course. What were some of those big obstacles that you had to overcome or challenges that you had to navigate and how did you do that?
Well, I think of one really big one is I was a couple years into building Altimeter, and I realized I was adding a lot of partners without really defining what our relationships were going to look like. And that was causing problems because we were having issues around making decisions. And when you bring in other analysts who are also very strong minded, independent thinking, very, again, creative, super smart, uh, there are a lot of differences of opinions. And the interesting thing about analysts is that we tend to also be a little bit passive aggressive. We don't like actually having those conflicts and conversations. We just be really nice to each other and just avoid the conversations completely, completely avoid it. So this led to a lot of problems culturally about how you actually run something like this. So
Mm.
looking back I wish I had done a better job of setting up the company in a much clearer way about how we were going to make decisions. And to make clear, yes, I'm a peer of yours, but I'm also the CEO. And the decisions that I could make as CEO without having to tap into the partnerships and agreements around what the partnership would make decisions on that I had to consult everybody on. So it just wasn't clear from the beginning. We finally did clarify those things, but I wish I had done those in the beginning. It would have saved me so many headaches. And then the other big thing is I was in the process of selling the company and also publishing a new book and took my eye off the business and
Mm.
realized that our pipeline had completely dried up, that there was no more cash coming in, and then had to do a layoff very quickly in like 2 weeks. And that's just bad management and bad leadership, and I had to do that, and it was just terrible to have to do that, to lay off all these people that I was really excited about, and dear friends too as well, and amazing people. So, again, it's one of those things where you have to stay diligent, and I didn't, and being coming to terms with that was really hard. And, I could have done a better job of communicating that and understanding that and owning it and being able to move forward with the team. And I was just so shocked and confused, at the same time. Again, I could have done a much better job at that point. I was just so filled with shame,
Oh,
embarrassment, and, at a time when I should have been reaching out to people, went in. And so it's one of those things when I see people going through these things, it's the most natural thing to say, I just need to gather the wagons around and just not reach out. And I have to fight that instinct for myself and encourage people to come out and be able to do that. The thing I credit more than anything else to doing a lot of this was my membership in YPO, Young Presidents Organization. And so I really encourage people, and especially women, to join these peer based groups because they can, and then when you have that level of trust and confidentiality, you can put it all on the table and they will tell you things and help you find your blind spots. It's like a personal board of advisors. So if you can't find one, make one because and the ones that I am in with all women are especially amazing. So it's wonderful to have ones that are both male and female because it's a really good way to have that diversity. But I love my sisterhood too as well. They feed very different sides and very important to me.
I very much feel the same about that. Okay, I want to dig in a little bit because that last experience that you shared with us was really powerful. So, how did that influence how you continued to navigate your career? Like, what was the big takeaway from that, and how did it like change how you think about running a business and leading and all of those things? Because it's a heavy learning experience, right? Like and I do believe that people learn from failure. So, how did that change things for you?
Well, the day I sold my company was the hardest day because I was giving my baby to somebody else, and I was so
Ugh.
happy. I walked up to the CEO, who was a friend of mine, and said, "Thank you so much for taking this burden away from me." It's like when our kids graduate and go to college, it's you're so happy for them, and you're so sad too at the same time. And it's this total bag of emotions that come up. And so what it told me was that, I love this space of exploration of and of building things. I love to build things, but I don't like to run things. And so like don't run
Mm,
things again. And so when I had the opportunity to go and be a chief research officer, it felt pretty good because I wasn't going to be running a group and division necessarily. It would be a very, very small group inside of a larger organization with lots of resources. But in the end, I still had to run something. And I'm like, why did I do this again to myself? And so when I left and started my current situation now, I'm very determined not to run something again. And I can't tell you how hard it is not to start something again. There's all this crazy AI stuff happening. There are so many opportunities, and I keep running towards it. I'm like, no, 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 don't do that. I keep running towards it, like, no, no, no. People call me, like, come join this, do that. Let's start a consulting firm, do it. And I'm like, I just have to say no because I've seen this play out again and again. And I just recently just decided there was this new opportunity to do agentic advisory and all these things, and I could scale. And I just went, don't do it. Just don't do it. Find another way to make money, to get my entrepreneurial buildings
yeah.
needs met, but don't build this area of business that you know is just going to be a rabbit hole where you have to hire people. Just don't do it. So I've backed away from it now, and
I
it was
feel like
hard.
you're like my spirit animal here because I feel so much of what you're describing in my own career trajectory and I'm like I'm doing everything I can to keep what I'm building small and for me and it keeps trying to grow and I'm like, like how do I like I want to lean in and let it do its thing at the same time I'm like I know that that's not what I want. And I know that that's not going to bring me joy. So I'm trying to stay focused. So listening to you tell your story is helping me navigate my own. Um, okay, now something a lot of women struggle with this because I see this come up on my podcast all the time. We are so easy to talk about like the trajectory and where we want to go and the plans that we have for the future and even we'll take the time to talk about our missteps. But I don't feel like we oftentimes spend enough around our successes, like to stop and reflect and be like, man, I did that. Like this was amazing and that was my success. So when you think back at your career, what are some of your proudest moments? Like what are the successes that you're like, I did that and you just feel immense pride about it?
Well, I'll just give a small example. I was a classical trained pianist, still play, and always thought, and I love theater, and so I just love New York because all the art scene. And I had the opportunity to go and speak at Radio City Music Hall for the World Forum and
Wow.
World Business Forum. And that's I'm sitting on the stage at Radio City Music Hall, like I'm playing Broadway. So that was it was great. I go, I'll never have this opportunity again. I'm going to revel in this and enjoy it on the giant stage of Radio City Music Hall. So that's just like one professional highlight for me. I love and enjoy speaking because I can create this aha moment for 10 people or thousands and 10,000 people at the same time. But I think the thing that I'm most proud of professionally was building Altimeter because it was completely disruptive. I mean, every other analyst firm, I mean, these were giants, billion-dollar businesses. And I'm setting up a little shops going, I'm going to compete. Like, how on earth? Right. And, but I had a formula and I took a blue ocean strategy and said,
Mhm.
where can I go where they can't follow me? How do I create a moat? And what we did was every other analyst firm was charging per seat for the research. We gave our research away for free. And
Mm.
then we used social media to blast the doors off of it. And we were happen to be writing about how companies can use social media and mobile and digital, all these new areas that were coming out. Again, it was 2008, 2009. Oh, and also there was this thing called the recession happening. And we were growing like gangbusters. And what I realized is that disruption is pretty recession proof because when things are going badly, people want to know how do we weather this disruption? Pandemic was great for business, terrible for the world, great for my business. It's like the world has just fallen apart. How do we deal with this? But it's also really good in good times. Like, okay, how do we disrupt everyone else? How do we grow and be disruptive? So if we started the business and started writing, and typically a Forrester report, we get about 5 to 10,000 readers, and that was really, really good. We would get 100,000 readers, just
Wow.
exponentially bigger. And we only had to convert a small number of them to a preset client deliverables of assessments and strategy work that we would do that was highly repeatable. And so our scarcest resource was analyst time. So how do I leverage that analyst time to be the greatest amount possible? So built an entire organization around this, in particular invested in building a brand. And within a year, our brand was at the same levels as Forrester and Gartner on the topics that we chose to compete on. And we were 5 people. And
Wow.
so that is why we got successful because we were thinking in a very disruptive way, out of the box way, doing something that no one else could do. We knew that they would never follow us into the space because it was their business model. They couldn't do that. It's hard to
Yeah.
compete against free. And yet we had a way to convert people. Literally, people would just call up and say, you have been writing about the exact problem. Do you have a bug in my office? Do you have like a camera looking over my shoulder? How do you know my world? And it's because we took such a design thinking approach to identifying the problem really, really clearly that we wanted to solve and that we knew other people needed that solution. So 100% of our business was inbound. We did not have a marketing group. I had a salesperson, eventually two salespeople, because we had so many inbound sales and all they did was scope and timing. So it was a great business where we could focus the resources on the things that we did well, writing research and delivering results for our clients. And
I
again,
love
just a
that.
great strategy, right? So I like to talk about that because people will say, well, you talk about disruption and everything. And I go, oh, no, I did it too.
You're like,
I
"No, no, I'm a disruptor."
right? So I can talk in very tangible ways how to be disruptive. And again, this is about finding that little angle of something that you know deeply and understand, your perspective of how to see the world. And I am passionate about creating 1 million disruptors who will go out and disrupt their worlds because I think there is so much change that needs to happen. We are not going to get to the world we want to see and be in by incrementally making these little changes. We have to disrupt our way to it. And especially for women, we are brought up and taught not to be disruptive. We are trained not to be disruptive because it is dangerous. It is not socially acceptable. And I'm like, oh no, let's just go disrupt that. Let's
I
go and
love
cause a
that.
fuss and do so with a smile on our face. And I like to say it's important to say hard things in soft ways and soft things in hard ways. And it because there's no win-win for women. If you're going to say something hard, you're just going to be slammed for it. If you're saying
Yep.
something that is soft, you're seen as weak. So you
Yep.
have to counter these 2 things at the same time, and it is such a difficult thing to do because you're screwed no matter which way you do it.
It's true. It's true. Oh, well, I'm like I'm obsessed with that success story. I think that is it's probably one of the best ones I've ever heard. Okay, so I want to keep this going because one of the things that I feel so strongly about is the saying "empowered women empower women." Now you've talked about being part of these small these your peer groups, right? And you how you like the sisterhood ones and the women helping women. I truly believe that. But I do believe, right, that we as women owe it to other women to help them and to inspire them, to lead them and guide them. So, what are some of the things that you're doing these days that you feel like kind of lives out that saying, right? That empowered women empower women.
I do a lot of work with women's groups, and women's groups are under fire right now because if you are having supporting women, it is people are like, oh, it's DEI, you can't do this, it's discriminatory. So anything I can do to support that with my writing, I have had to change the way I write things. I was talking to and say things. I was talking to doing a prep for an organization, and I was talking about psychological safety, and they just cut me off like, "No, we don't talk about psychological safety. It's too associated with DEI." And I went, "Okay, you know, you
Whoa.
have to accept that, but it is a fundamental thing that you do in leadership." So I'll adjust it as needed for the audience that I'm in, but the fundamentals still remain that if we promote inclusion and belonging for everyone, the people who most benefited from it are the people who are most excluded from that. So again, just keeping up that dialogue because it is such an
Yeah.
important part that needs to continue. So putting just doing that with my content and my research, looking at the broken rung. I love the McKinsey lead in research that shows that especially for women of color, that the first rung of promotion from individual contributor to team leader is place where it's broken because women of color are promoted at nearly half the rate of their peers of white women and men of color. So very passionate about supporting that. And, so it's a matter of picking and choosing how you're going to do this. Whenever I meet a woman author or a woman entrepreneur, I wanna take them under my wing and just say, make sure you join this group called Authoress that is about women that supports just women authors, and then make sure that, uh, as you are starting these companies, that you understand and that you need to have this peer group. I don't care where it is, entrepreneurs organization, YPO, get in them. Find them, create them for yourself. Because being a CEO and entrepreneur, it's a very, very lonely place. There is nobody you can talk to, and you need people to talk to.
It's true. Ah, I love that. All right. Well, listen, I know that we're rounding out our time together. So I want to, before we wrap up today, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take with them?
I think it's being honest with ourselves. It is the one thing that I've learned over time, and I'm not always honest with myself. It's just really, really hard. We think we are, but we're not. I mean, it's taken me, 3 decades to realize, "Oh, no, no, don't run a company again." And I still feel that. And if I'm honest with myself, no, that is not the best way to be approaching. And everyone's doing it right now. And it just, I can't even begin to tell you how much that pull is there. But if I'm honest with myself, it's not going to bring me joy. It is not the thing that I'm good at. What I'm really good at are these things and continue doing them. And it just says that I have to be even more creative, more disruptive, and thinking out of the box to figure out how do I make that happen? Because it is not the easy way. It is not the way that everyone else has laid out. So I'm leaning back into this core understanding of who I am and trying to be really honest with myself about what is the work and the life that I want to have. And no one else can have that conversation with you. You can have a lot of people giving you inputs and everything. And I would
Sure.
say that I've gotten some really bad advice, especially from men along the way, because they did not understand where I was and where I
Yep.
was in my career and understand the specific challenges for women. I was told early on, don't go onto this board, a very large, prestigious board, because this is not going to be great and fun. It's just going to be horrible. So I turned it down. And if you ever get an opportunity to be on a board, take it, is what I would say, because the things you will learn as a board member are just so unique. Again, just be honest with yourself. Like, truly be
I
honest
love
with
that.
yourself and face the reality of who you are and don't fight against that and really be honest. Like, what is it that brings you joy?
Charlene, I think that is a beautiful way for us to wrap up our conversation today. I'm so grateful for you sharing your story, your journey with us, your successes, all those pivotal moments along the way. Really enlightening. So, thank you so much for being a guest today. For our listeners, if you've listened this long, thank you so much for listening to this conversation today. If you've enjoyed this episode, please head over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, rate, comment, leave us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Hi guys, I want to share a bit about an organization that I support called Wednesday Women. They're on a mission to increase the visibility of executive women leaders that you should know, learn from, and be inspired by. On LinkedIn, they share the profile of two amazing women each week, on Wednesdays of course. And now just imagine if we all followed, amplified, and nominated the women that we want to see more of. Their initiative provides examples of women CEOs, founders, sales executives, technical leaders, and so many more. By supporting Wednesday Women, you'll see more of these professionals in your social feeds, of course, but also on stages, podcasts, and panels. If you're interested in learning more and supporting their initiative, head over to www.wednesdaywomen.org or follow them on LinkedIn.